12 years continuously, you never stopped?
We never stopped. Or maybe like a month or so.
No vacation, no rest.
Some vacation. I just came back from a vacation, but yeah, you pre-record some stuff and then you do some reruns, and in the middle you try to put a vacation, squeeze a vacation.
Yeah, I guess it's been nonstop since. Well, no, when you guys started, it started in normal times.
2011. Actually, 13 years.
2000,
Why am I
2011.
diminishing my age?
2011.
13 years, yeah, 2011.
So back when things were like normal.
Normal, yeah.
I mean, maybe at that time, did they seem like
there's always stuff to complain about, and we're not gonna act like it was perfect, but of course the range of the issues are very different. Like there was some corruption, okay, some election fraud, maybe some guys making stupid decisions, but it never was like we just lost 20% of our land.
I mean, looking back, do you feel like, wow, we didn't know?
It's not to say that I wouldn't go back and do the same thing all over, because you always have to have your hand on the pulse, and actually the outcome of all of this is to try and embarrass the government enough to act better. So this comparison doesn't work backwards. But of course, the whole scope of the issues was very different back then.
I mean, what kinds of things were you talking about in?
There was like plenty of corruption. There was Armenia coming back from the events of 2008, and it lasted for a while, and we had quite some, demonstrations and protests that were sort of echoes of what happened in 2008. That was when we started, and we were coming up to the elections of 2013 with some hilarious stuff happening back then. So there's always stuff to complain about and make fun of, and no lack of stupid decision whatsoever.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you guys often get compared to The Daily Show, right?
So that's what we were obviously inspired by, The Daily Show and The Onion News, because before doing the show in video, we were writing these articles that were very Onion-esque in nature, and it lasted for a while, but that too, like that helped solve some issues. Like I remember one of the things that was very vocal and everyone shared it was that the government wanted to tax maturity leaves. They either wanted to cut the money that was paid to women, maturity leaves.
Oh, maternity leaves.
Maturity.
Yeah.
Okay, not American. So yeah.
Well, I would like a maturity leave.
That would be funny.
That's the
And the analogy we made was that government will tax by taking some 20% of every mother's milk, and it kind of worked because it resonated with the people, and the government backed down because they understood how stupid that was. Instead of giving more sort of benefits, they were cutting the few flimsy ones they had.
So they were listening and actually caring about public.
Yeah. Back then, everyone cared about what like. We remember there was this one case with the mayor's office was discovered by some journalists, I think Radio Liberty, that they spent $30,000 on cognac and as gifts to various delegation, and it was like a very loud thing. It was talked for months, and it was during Narek Margaryan's mayorship, and at one of the events we met him and he was like, guys, I want to explain, because we meet these delegations, you need to give some gifts, and this is like a gift that works. Like, what else? He was really interested in explaining why that was. And now expenditure of $30,000. Remember, they spent like $2 million on just the lighting for Christmas, and nobody even bothers to explain it.
And they drilled the holes
And they
into the
drilled the
walls of
holes. So yes,
the historic buildings.
So this very transparent government doesn't give a shit on what how much money you spend and what the public opinion is, but that very corrupt and very untransparent closed government was actually more sort of willing to explain why this 30,000 was spent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that wouldn't make news nowadays.
Oh, that would today
$30,000
make news. Yes, it would like get caught in the middle of someone's brother winning like a tender or this asphalt coverage that you can rip off with your bare hand. And I think this guy Artur Chahoyan, he makes a video every day, which is like 10 times the importance of that 30.
I just saw one of his videos.
Yeah, he basically rips the road asphalt with his bare hand. That's how shitty a job is being done.
Yeah, but if you do a crap job, then you can do it many times and keep making money.
Of course, that's the whole point.
Well, just to cut in, welcome to our summer digest. I have a very special guest today, Narek Margaryan, who is half of ArmComedy. The last time I saw you, Narek, you were a guest lecturer in my classroom at AUA.
Sounds very important.
Yes, I think so.
A guest lecturer.
Yes. And I remember the kiddos, the freshmen, were very impressed, and it was a great mix of the seriousness with levity.
I will try to do the same
situation
today. Yes.
So, no, we're very honored to have you on the show.
Well, thank you.
And who better to talk about how to deal in these difficult times? And we're just talking about, the daily barrage of stuff. I mean, it's a struggle, really, even when you're doing a twice weekly newscast, to just try to condense things down so the audience doesn't get overwhelmed by the events.
It is a different kind of struggle. Like back then, it was a struggle to get enough material to fill in a 22-minute slot. Now there's more than enough, but there is stuff that is so doomed, so gloomy, so tragic in its nature, that the struggle really is how do we package to keep this funny and show the gravity of what happened. So it's a different modes, different types of struggles back then and back now, and that's been the case ever since 2020, because every time there's something happening that is irreparable, that is sort of destroying Armenia's reputation, that is destroying any hope for the future, and that is literally destroying lives of 100,000 people, and not even exaggerating, but you have to keep it lighthearted and comedic.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, though, there's such a culture of mockery, sarcasm. I mean, you see these videos of Pashinyan and Anna, wearing ridiculous clothing, tight clothing, on their bicycles, and of course it's, you have to just, it's, people are mocking it, but it's not really funny at some point.
That's what you wear when you ride a bike, because I'm a big cyclist myself. You cannot bike in anything else, but that's not the problem here. The problem is that he's a head of a state which is in this deep, grave situation, and he finds time to do personal PR at 5 a.m. in the morning. That's the problem. I don't care whether he does tennis or he swims. It's actually probably even a good thing.
Yeah, but I have to see him in that tight shirt?
You kind of have to.
Is that right?
You have to
Do the citizens have to bear this? Is this what we signed up for?
Well, not every president is athletic and good looking. Yes, sometimes that's the case, but
Were Armenians craving a non-athletic president? Is that what we've
I
been waiting
mean,
for?
I would be surprised if Armenians choose an athletic president because we're so unathletic by nature. But it's always
You do triathlons.
yeah. But it's always these things, the superficial things, are always the easiest to be mocked. Let's use that word, although I personally don't like this word. Satirized, let's say. They're the easiest. Like there are this, this photo of the current mayor singing with somebody's foot in his hand. There is this guy in cutie socks who is now the vice Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's the easiest route to mock them, but it's the one we choose not to take because the substantial flaws that they have are so much more interesting. It would be a gift wrapped in red ribbon if we started mocking Pashinyan's tights or whatever Anna is wearing or whatever Avignon did when he was a teenager. We all did crazy stuff which we probably can be ashamed of today when we were teenagers, but that's not why I dislike him or I think his policies are wrong. There are much bigger issues, and there would be a gift, and I refuse to give them that gift. We will continue mocking and satirizing what is of an essence and of importance.
So how do you guys choose your topics? I mean, give me an example of your latest episode.
You just consume news and it kind of comes at you. You watch certain things, and of course, you have this institutional memory of what this particular guy said 5 years ago, 2 years ago, because we've been doing it nonstop for so many years. So yeah, it's easy to remember and but back then you said this, and pull out that video from YouTube, and that's what we do. People send us stuff, of course, that they find funny. And now with some politicians becoming like pioneers of social media, going into TikTok and exposing themselves willy, you get even more stuff because they are now willing to be a buffoon. And back in the day, you should have found it, because like back in the day, some news outlets would normally cut out the material that was, a kind of not the most flattering of a politician. So you would have to go and watch the raw footage or a longer footage, to watch hours and hours to get a gif. And now seems like some people just pull out their gifs and put it on TikTok and get some likes and views and feel good about themselves.
You mentioned that, back in the day when you started, under Serge Sarkisian's administration, you would actually get politicians coming up to you and trying to explain themselves over something you brought up on the show.
Yeah.
I mean, have you had that happen since 2020?
Not so much since 2020. Like before let's take Revolution 2 2020. Yes, they would do the same. They would, okay, we'd take this because this is important. Sometimes we'd be like in certain communications, but after the events of 2020, well, first of all, I cut off any ties with the people I used to know. And they've been like, maybe like I can count them on one hand when they tried to explain why this or that happened. And those were excuses rather than explanations.
Good excuses?
No.
I mean, that's... Yeah, so you said you cut off ties. I mean,
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of people, I mean, in different fields, tend to be conformist and deal with this government.
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide to cut them off? Was it a decision? Was it just a natural instinct?
Well, a decision and an instinct, but to understand that being a conformist and not cutting down these ties is very beneficial. It's very beneficial. Like, I would be invited to many events as an MC or a host or a moderator, all these forums happening, and I just chose not to be on the same platform with them because I don't think any of this is a coincidence. I think it was very premeditated, and whenever chance there is, like, to go into discussion, I'm okay to talk and not pull punches and try to get their perspective, but to a certain extent. Like, there are certain people who've said certain things that I think there is no way of getting back and repairing, because, like, back in the day, these people would have disappeared had anyone said, we don't care about those POWs, POWs. We don't care about them. Imagine a sentence like that being pronounced in 94, in 2006, in 2015. This person would have disappeared from the public sort of conversation for good. And here it's like another story that was like forgotten on the next day.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I mean, I wasn't in Armenia at the time, but some people pointing out that it was, you know, you don't have to go back to the 90s. It was under Sarkisian's presidency that I believe they did a raid into Azeri-controlled territory just to get, not even the POWs, to get bodies.
The helicopter crash, you mean? Yeah, that was 2015 or 14. Yeah.
So we went from
because we could have done
a very
it.
dangerous raid.
Of course, yeah.
To recover.
But that's what a country does when you take responsibility for your citizens. That's what you're supposed to do. Anything else would have been weird. Not doing that would have been weird, and people would have condemned this same government had they not done it. And you remember how very small things were blown out of proportion, and now like second or third guy in the rank can say, like, we don't care about those POWs, and it's okay. And it was shot at a diaspora event, and not even the diaspora is pursuing it. Let's be honest. Not even all the peoples who go to these meetings whenever somebody like this diaspora guy, how's it called now, Zare Sinanyan's office, whenever he goes and he meets some people in the diaspora, and I've never heard anyone ask him, well, how can you tolerate an official who has uttered these words? And it was on candid camera, so I don't know.
I think
somehow it's okay. So the tolerance towards okay has gone sort of down very much. Like the other day, this is like a really, really small thing compared to whatever is happening. But now we get this water outages, electricity outages, more than for the past 20 years. Not as much as in the 90s, but kind of getting alarming, because with all the construction you see, you're probably thinking that this one nuclear plant will not be sufficient, even if half of these new residents go and live in these buildings. And same applies to water, and same applies to gas pipelines. So you kind of get worried that your electricity, without any sort of notification, goes for 20 minutes or for 3 hours just by itself. And then somebody made an app that now can send you a notification that if you live on this street in this building, you will have an outage. And the amount of people that were just happy to have that app was just astonishing. So it takes
we're becoming a digital nomad capital.
This nomad capital, people who are very sort of progressive and should be smart just by the nature of the work they do, they were very happy. They were happy.
Was this a government app or
no,
just
it was
private?
Somebody did it. So it's okay not to have electricity for 6 hours as long as you get to be notified. And this describes sort of whatever is happening. It's a small thing, like I said, but it describes everything else. So people from Artsakh had to lose their homes, but now we're paying them, I don't know, 40,000 drams, 60,000 drams. Okay, we'll increase this by another 10,000 drams. Aren't you happy? So this kind of, I think it corrupted and spoiled society at its core. So the understanding, the critical thinking's gone out of window, and the understanding of what is important and what's really not has diminished.
We
It's
had to
almost
lower the
gone.
bar.
The bar is so low we cannot see the bar. The bar is gone. The bar is a dot now.
To what would you credit this total degradation of what's what's acceptable? The line of what's normal, what's not normal.
I think a psychologist would have put it much better than I ever would, but when you get trauma, it's only logical for your brain to shut down how much emphasis you put on that trauma, how much you let it impact you. So when we block all these bad things, it's a natural thing when you cannot like have a catastrophic trauma every day, because otherwise your nervous system will break down. So you get less affected by it. And when you have like sequences of traumas for 4 years, imagine how sort of dull you are now, how your nerves don't react to anything.
Well, I think it's two things. It's not just the traumatic events, one after the other, but also the flippancy of the authorities, of the people who are supposed to be looking out for the best interest of Armenians. They're totally shameless. And it's almost like, I mean, this word gets overused, I think, in the US, but gaslighting. Like, you're the crazy one. What's your problem? Why do you have a problem? Like going to Tavush and just kind of intimidating these villagers, coming with your big convoy, telling them, oh, well, it's your fault. I mean, Pashinyan said that they made their protests with Sorpazan caused an effect like Hiroshima. This is
yes.
This is crazy.
Yes.
This is crazy
Just
talk, but
a very fresh thing. He was talking to some guy in a village, and this guy said, I had a chance to go to Canada, but I decided to stay here. And he says, don't sort of blackmail me by saying you would have gone to Canada. And this is the guy. Back in the day, when he was a journalist, he was constantly talking about how severe was the migration during Serge Sargsyan's time, that thousands of Armenians have left. And now he has this, like, everyone I know is leaving. And now he has this unprecedented migration, which is not being counted. Like back in the day, there were some numbers coming from here, there, and we don't have any more numbers. Nobody's looking into that. And these numbers are very sad, very irreparable at this point. When we're way below 3 million now, and every year I want to know the numbers, because this is they may say, well, if you don't know the numbers, how can you judge? But it's very obvious that the villages are becoming empty. Everything is concentrated in Yerevan. And even in Yerevan, whoever gets the slightest chance to do something elsewhere, they immediately go, because you have no certainty of what's going to happen tomorrow. You cannot do long-term planning anymore. Like taking a mortgage, can you do it? Well, I don't know.
Even people I notice who are comfortable, they own their home, for example. They have jobs. Some of them will take
owning a home means nothing when this home can cost $100,000 or $20,000 in a couple of weeks if another war breaks out. It's not even a guarantee. So that's the severity of the situation, I think, that you cannot do long-term planning. So this is only natural for these people to shut down any emotion, any sort of trauma, and become virtually impenetrable. And when the government sees that they got away with this, and then they got away with the bigger thing, and then ultimately they got away with the biggest thing unimaginable, right? Giving Artsakh to Azerbaijan, and just saying that this has always been Azerbaijani territory. That's like the biggest no-no in Armenian politics that you could have imagined. And even they themselves would have never uttered it back in the day. And we have these videos of each and every one of them being even more, we have this word, vochmitizakan, not a single ichist to Azerbaijan. They were the most vocal, because when you're opposition, of course, you can criticize more things. And when you become responsible, you see all the limitations and all the big politics happening around you. But for them to flip to that extent and get away with it, like, anyone who ever owned a dog understands this. If you let the dog stay on the couch once, that's where it's gonna lie down for the rest of it. Then if you let it, open the fridge, it will open the fridge. So it becomes the new normal. So the new normal now has no boundaries.
I think that's why your show also resonates, though, because it's like, it's so, when you meet somebody even, or when you see a program like that where somebody else is also finding this situation messed up and pointing out all of the hypocrisy, pointing out everything that's totally bizarre and wrong, it's important reinforcement that you're not going crazy.
Yeah. And also, like, ever since 2020, the audience basically has been so consistent. It doesn't diminish in numbers, but it also rarely grows in numbers. So that also, like, okay, they may not personally like me or my colleague or the show in general, but it doesn't reach a wildly broader audience too. So this is kind of the group we have to deal with, them being like 100 to 150,000 people at most, including people from Canada, US, Russia, and some other countries. So within Armenia, that would be like 100,000.
But still, that's not a small number, considering
It's not.
that you're definitely, you guys manage to do it yourselves. You're not getting, obviously now, what's on public TV, what's getting promoted. It's nothing that you're talking about.
Of course. They would invite Hovsep Khurshudyan or some other pro-governmental NGO gongo type person for the 97th time rather than have someone with a different opinion. And I haven't been on public television since 2018, and that's an indicator of something. And okay, like, it's not that that's something you want, but also to the people who only watch public television, that's the reality. And public television is not even the worst form of government propaganda, because to the people in the villages who watch these channels with not just wrong, like misguided or manipulated news, but entirely made up news. There is this sort of group of YouTube channels with entirely made up news headlines and videos that says Aliyev has now surrendered to Pashinyan. Aliyev has died. Turkey is under flood. And then on the next day, Aliyev is somehow magically alive again. So, but to older people, to some people with certain education, this doesn't ring a bell. And them coming from like a Soviet era when they thought that the news never lied, they applied this same thing to this video. Think, well, it looks like news, it sounds like news, then it's news. And when news tells you that everything is cool, Pashinyan is just slapped Aliyev and made him lick his shoe, well, that happened. You cannot explain to these people that just some guy sitting in a basement just totally made it up. We even, at some point, I had the idea to make like a mockery of that, to do an exact channel like that, only even more sort of unbelievable. And like Aliyev has died sort of 20 times just before lunch, or with that kind of headlines. But then I thought that, okay, if it really works, it will serve the same purpose again. It would be too meta for people to get.
You might have
the
a niche
idea is kind
audience.
of funny, yes, because of the wording they use, that Aliyev came crawling to Pashinyan again, asked Putin not to shoot, or something like that. And the guy literally dies 5 times a week. Erdogan dies 5 times a week. Ankara is flooded at least twice a week. Baku has gone under sea many times and being in earthquakes and fires. And nobody seems to care.
Yeah, maybe that's for the older crowd. And then on Twitter, though, I noticed you brought up the electricity cuts, water cuts, all of the service interruptions in Yerevan. When I tweeted a video of a water cut I experienced, just showing how the faucet and the water comes out, and mentioned the electricity cuts as well. I hadn't gotten such a barrage of fakes in, I think, a year. Just, I mean, it was clearly the most sensitive point, because all of the propaganda now is that, okay, you know, Artsakh, there was nothing these people could do. You know, it's the formers, Russians, whatever. But Yerevan was supposed to be the bright spot. You know, this is going to be the real Armenia. We're going to be an IT hub.
So this one city is
you know,
going to be
like a Singapore city-state, whatever. Or maybe also Dilijan.
Do they have a map?
And Gyumri.
Have they seen Singapore? Okay.
You know, that's, I mean, this is what they're kind of talking up, that, oh, no, we're going to be even better. And then when you put stuff like this, I think it's the most sensitive.
I would even secretly wish for these electricity outages to become like bigger, because then when these people don't have internet and they want to, you know, warm up something and they can, they will really try to feel this on their skin. Because now it's very easy to say that, look, this is a country where people shampoo their dogs. Everything must be fine then.
Oh yeah, there are dog hotels.
Yes, and the dog hotel went out of business. Okay, it proved to be a business that didn't survive. So,
oh no,
that's something. Yeah, but
that's an indicator.
Like
secretly,
I want everyone like knowing that I will take some of this punishment too. But it would be good for people to face that reality that. This out of mind planning is backfiring, and when you see all this lavish construction that's been done throughout Yerevan, nobody even lives there. By now, it's maybe 15% dwelt. Imagine what happens when 50% of these residential buildings are populated. How much outages? They wouldn't even get water higher than the third floor. But this wasn't planned. This wasn't thought through. This was just a quick scheme to show everyone that there is construction going on, and you can apply for a reasonably my tongue wouldn't even say good terms to buy an apartment, because it's really shitty. I just got back from Finland, and their mortgage monthly percentage is 0.4, and comparing that to Armenia, it's kind of brutal here.
Well, I remember when I was briefly doing this Igor's fellowship, and somebody said, oh, but you should stick with it. You can get an interest-free loan from the government. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Should stick with these guys.
No, I mean, you could have gotten it without sticking with these guys. It's not relevant on that, but it should be like even smart people don't understand that this money that you are not paying in taxes, well, it comes from this whole big pie of taxes. You still need it's the same money. You just put it from one pocket to the other. But just the fact that you are briefly the beneficiary of that, does it cloud your judgment to that extent? Well, apparently it does.
So who is your audience? Who are the people that want to hear a little dose of
They're the
reality?
best. They're the best. I think people with critical thinking who love to discover that there are like-minded people, that they're not the crazy ones who see all this craziness happening. I think sometimes, you need this confirmation sort of from that you're not the only one noticing it. And how is this that this government gets away with literally anything? And I think these are the people. Also, since news has been so traumatic, very traumatic to read, people just chose, to leave this one news outlet which delivers the sad stories in a funny way and sort of picks what's essential and important for them. And for me, it's a very big responsibility, because then I cannot sort of choose stories willy-nilly. I have to feed it stories that are maybe are not so funny. Maybe I failed to make them super hilarious, but still are very important. So it needs to be in that episode because this is important. This is an important block in understanding this mechanics of today's Armenia. But when you don't have it, you really don't get what happens in Armenia. When you all your information is from like people who just came, went by. Maybe you logged into Twitter for 5 minutes, read something on Facebook. You get this very like patches of information, and you don't get the full picture at all.
And unfortunately, a lot of the news that's coming out of Armenia that we get in the diaspora is very not superficial, I would say. It's filtered for us. It's certainly dominated by the official line, even if it comes with some sort of veneer of neutrality, of a false neutrality.
Even when it does, sometimes it's people who they themselves don't have the understanding of what's been going on because they have been absent from this country for 20 years. They maybe came a couple of years ago and now they are retelling. But your sort of the prequels to what happened are very distorted. You don't have a picture because 2 or 5 years ago, you were the one who was getting this information from this and that outlet. So you come with a very skewed understanding or sometimes entirely incorrect understanding of what's been going on in Armenia. And that's your point zero. And from then on, you start building. But your building block, your foundations are wrong or missing. Or sometimes very often when I see these people there, it's not that they want to manipulate, they just don't have the information at all, but they're making judgments and assumptions based on that.
And you travel a lot, you go to the diaspora communities. I mean, what are the main questions people have? What do they want to know from you?
When will this end? That's the most common question I hear. But it's been changing. Like I remember being in LA in 2019 and everyone was, finally we got rid of them. Good. And it was like very much that mood in the air and whoever you talked to. And the last time I was there was 22 or 23 and it was entirely like, when are we getting rid of these guys? So the change was very, very obvious, but I don't think there's much diaspora can do to influence this one way or another, nor I think it should. But I think there is more truth penetrating today than any other given time. But that's not enough.
It's not enough? Well, if you don't think the diaspora should have a role, then what does it matter?
That's a very long topic of conversation because my belief really is you cannot have a role. You cannot have a role when you don't bear any of the consequences. That's my firm belief. My friends may disagree with me, but that's a very, very firm belief.
But do you think that the diaspora is not affected if there's no Armenian state?
No, I mean, we've of course. But we've seen this affection to a certain... we've seen the diaspora affecting events in 2018, and we see how it worked out. So...
yeah, we can even name names.
Of course. But it's been... I don't see any malicious intent in it. I see them being fooled, them being manipulated, and them believing these stories of these oligarchs coming and taking half of your possessions. And maybe they even knew a guy who was maybe swindled here in Armenia, and that made this belief even more firm. But eventually, when we see this influence, it did not lead to any, because it was very emotional, see? And that's always the way it's going to be. Whatever else happens, the diaspora is going to take it very emotionally, not rationally, because one, they don't take all the consequences that will stem out of this event, and second, they will not have the full information to believe this in. Because
I was going to say, I don't know if it's emotional, but rather misinformed or uninformed.
Back in the day, Nikol Pashinyan was the guy who was saying that it was like the leading theme of his newspaper, that the government secretly printed 400,000 passports just to, manipulate any elections they can. That was he's repeated it like millions of times. Then he came to power. Did he ever find one of those 400,000 passports? No, he didn't. Did the number of people that vote pro-governmental on the elections change percentage-wise? It changed in numbers, but it became less. But percentage-wise, there's always 30% of people voting pro-government in Armenia. Traditionally, that's because how much there's the government workers, their families, their relatives, people who are dependent on the government one way or another. So these 30% has never changed. So either he took possession of those 400,000 passports, the secret ones, or they never existed. It's just that 30% of Armenians, under any circumstances, is it administrative pressure or anything else, they will go and vote for the acting government, even if it's Jesus or devil himself. Doesn't matter to
in
them.
America as well. I mean, the incumbent statistically,
Probably.
and this is considered a developed democracy. The incumbent should win,
but
normally.
Did anyone like in the diaspora look at every detail to this extent? No, they just had the opinion that elections in Armenia are falsified. That's it. You only get like the creme de la creme, the headline, and based on that headline, you then make sort of judgments. We do a march in support of Nikol. We wear Dukhov hats and etc. etc. But it's wrong. Like, I'm not saying that the Armenians here were any smarter because they did the exact thing, but they at least had the chance to be introduced to all this knowledge, and then some would get it, some wouldn't get it, but that's the outcome we got. Ultimately, we're very similar that way, but I don't see a way diaspora can sort of affect, in a good or in a bad way, things very sort of directly. Even if they have the best intention, they saw this one guy who would be like a perfect prime minister for Armenia. There is no way they can sort of bring them to power.
It's interesting, I was thinking Pashinyan's book is not translated in English. And there's a lot of strange things.
Here's
that he
a
says.
Government grant somebody can win and translate it. Remember, his book was translated to Albanian. I think we mocked it on government grant. There was a government grant to translate that book into either Albanian or some other very
obscure,
I will not say obscure, but like non-trendy language, where people are very humbly interested in Armenia, let's say.
But it's interesting, though, because here, I guess, like as you said, people had the chance to know who was Pashinyan more than in diaspora.
You have the full possibilities. Whether you use them or not, it's one thing, but then sort of your decision is your decision, and that's in accordance with the constitution of Armenia. Anything else, first of all, it's beyond the constitution, and second of all, I don't suppose anyone does that amount of homework to know it, to be exactly in tune with what's going on in Armenia. Neither it would be fair for anyone to choose to have any effect on something that will ultimately not affect his life, but would affect my life.
Well, the decision, though, to elect him also affected people in Artsakh who didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
So...
No, but they voted for the Artsakhian alternative to him. So
you mean the
Arayik
version of him?
Yes, he was a very obvious version of him, and they voted for him.
I think, though, from my observation, the votes for him at the time it was an optimistic. For most people,
so were Nikol votes.
Optimistic. No, I'm not talking Arayik. I'm talking Nikol. People voted for him out of optimism for something better, not because they wanted to, live in garbage.
No, this information background has been sort of dripping for decades, and it ultimately got full, and it led to the revolution. But now it's dripping at a higher rate, but we are also less penetrable to it, given our traumas that we spoke about earlier. So yes, they're doing horrible things, much more horrible than anyone's ever done, like the case with this woman being hit by the escort of Pashinyan's...
Being run over by his convoy, yeah.
By his convoy. Like, imagine that happening, I don't know, during any president. There was this member of parliament in whose restaurant there was a fight and a god guy killed. They did this.
You still hear about it today.
You still hear about it today. There's one thing. There was like a... what's the word for it? Vigil cast with moms, candles. With candlelight vigil. There was that for days, and then this person resigned from his position as a member of parliament, and still we hear about it. Now, a pregnant woman got hit by a car, and nobody even remembers. I bet you nobody remembers her name.
Well, I do. So how do you fight apathy? How do you stay sane in times like this?
That's this weird mutation that I have in my brain that I don't know, sublimes these things with humor. And, humor has always been a protection and self-preservation mechanism, and I think in my case it just works a little more efficiently. So I sublime this with humor. I don't know. I've been very depressed. I remember we had this conversation when you were back in Aravno, and you said, come, like, do a stand-up thing for the people of all. I couldn't find the strength to do that because I knew very clearly what was going to happen, and I'm sure you did too. It was just sort of to prove yourself you are doing the best you can in this situation, knowing you will fail, but then looking back, you'll say, well, at least I tried, right? That was, I think, in my opinion, that was like your motivation to go on, or at least some of the people who were there. But in my view, like, I would feel so bad because knowing it would be another case if I didn't know, if I really thought there's a 50% chance that Nikol will preserve Artsakh and a 50% chance that he won't. But when I know and I go there, it would be like I'm lying to these people and trying to distract them from what's really going on by being not truthful. And that's why I didn't come, and I don't regret that decision. Even let that aside. I really wanted... Remember when after the war, there was this bus going to Dadivang. Like, you could still go to Dadivang for pilgrimage
for a short window
for a month or maybe a couple of months, I don't remember. And Dadivang was my place. I discovered it very late, like not on my first trip to Artsakh, and it was like I really fell in love with that place. And when I heard of there is this opportunity to go, I couldn't find the strength to go because I knew it would be the last time I'm seeing this. I knew. And I didn't have the strength, although I really wanted to go.
No, I remember that when I suggested this to you. But I mean, for me, what's the difference, if you know what these people have in store, between Aravno and Yerevan?
No, for one thing, for Yerevan, I don't know that that's what's going to happen. I certainly hope it's not. I hope that we will come to our senses and we will elect a government who will preserve this country. That's what I believe in. Had I lost that belief, I don't know what I would do. I still have that belief that in 2026, we will not be as dumb as we were in 2021, and we will make a better choice. Maybe even we won't, but every time there's a resistance, it limits the things they can do. Like when Bagrat Sarpazan's movement started, and when people came to and fueled this Harapara, this square that Nico said only he can feel, and I challenge you to feel this. And people feel it, at least on the first time, they surely did.
No question.
Had it worked out for good or not, it's a secondary question. Them seeing that there is this amount of people having like protests and having opposing views limits the extent they can maneuver and hurt Armenia. It's a firm belief of mine. That's why sometimes even look, we have this is a traditional Armenian thing. We find things to quarrel about, to become to become devised about. Of course, that's the easiest thing an Armenian can do. But even when you don't like some of the people on the stage, if you don't like some of the passages in the speeches that are made from the stage, it's important to be there and show that this resistance and this distrust in the society exists, because if you don't go there, then it's euphemeric. You're not sure whether it exists or not. You say it does, you say it's 30%, or you say it's 10%. Well, I don't know. Proof. That's proof. When people are standing there, that's proof. And I may not support all of the messages I hear from, I may really dislike some of the people who get up on stage. Some say very stupid things I really disagree with, but it's important to show this muscle that is there. And even though they claim victory, well, you see they are sort of less sadistic in their ways and less arrogant than they were before that.
I think so. I think even after the big May 9th rally, when they saw the students come out, I think that was a big shock for them, because I think they thought they had the youth figured out.
They saw AUA students of all voicing a complaint, the group of students that never stood up for anything. And even they sort of vocalized something and were beaten by the police brutally. And even AUA had to make a statement. That, to me, that was like unbelievable, because I think at no period to whatever turmoil Armenia's been in, AUA students are kind of, well, we're too busy.
Business.
Yeah, we have exams, and that's a good thing. I'm not saying this sort of with something bad in my mind. I'm just saying I was surprised.
I was pleasantly surprised, because I mean, I think it's not their fault. I think there is this depoliticization in the water where, it's politics is seen as dirty, and it's better just, focus on me.
Also, they find ways to get around that too. Like there's Brusov University, the linguistic university that I'm a graduate of, that I also lectured in for many years. So there was this decision by the government to merge Brusov University with the physical education university and the pedagogical university. And of all these three, only the students of Brusov made any protests. There were like very big protests, and as did the lecturers. Sort of everyone was very united. The other two did not join this protest for whatever reason. Like, I would understand why the guys didn't join, because they would have all these girls being from the same university, because Brusov is traditionally very like 80% females. But the pedagogical university was kind of sort of on the neutral side. So the students from Brusov like very vividly showed that they are not going to take this crap. And what they did, they sort of stretched the time that it is going to happen. They wanted to do it immediately, but when you do it in 3 years, by the time the time comes, the students who were very vocal, they would have graduated and gone. And the students that came would already
you're saying the
come
government
with a
stretched
pre-notion that I may enter this university, I may graduate another one. That's sort of the thing you have in the back. So they will never do the kind of protest that these students did. And it worked. And then they turned sort of the thing into this, building this academic city, sort of changed the whole narrative a little bit. So we're not merging these three, we're merging all the universities and something that I don't trust will happen from a government that is incapable to ban smoking in a cafe. I don't think they can pull together an academic city, because they literally can't ban putting salt on the tables in the cafe. That this is the level of their competence. But the narrative changes and it works. Let's be sort of truthful and say, yes, it works. The students are no longer protesting. Then, like a year later, same thing happened with the conservatory, and they started like a petition, come, help, save, because the conservatory, it needs to be in the center of town. Whether you go to Boston, it's in the center of town. Whether you go to New York, it's in the center of town. In Moscow, it's in the center of town. And there's a very good reason to it. Not because historically it's been there. Opera has to be there, and all the philharmonic orchestra chambers have to be in the center. They're never in the outskirts. And for the students to go and practice, they need to study nearby. This is very logical. They need to imagine carrying a cello on a train to some city and then coming to perform at the opera theater. That's just stupid, right? If it's right next to it, there's a building right next to it. And we didn't invent that every progressive city they have in mind when they bring this example have the same setting. But they will sort of say that, well, in Europe, there are academic cities. Well, their conservatories are next to the opera. In Europe, in America, in whatever, in Singapore, I'm sure, whatever example you're about to give me. But this changing of narrative sort of, and when conservatory started the petition, and all the other universities did not join either. And that's sort of the eternal struggle of the Armenian people, that we can never be unified and will find stuff to be displaced about. And
well, I think sometimes the emphasis, at least in the diaspora, is on, personal success, personal hard work, personal achievement, and the personal seems to take precedence, at least for parents, even in the eyes of, community, over the collective, this idea of, it's, as you said, it's challenging to get everyone to come together and maybe make some personal sacrifices, some career sacrifices for the greater whole. I don't know if you feel like that's the case here.
I don't know. What was, like, you've been in that program, Igor's. What was the success of the, name some case that was successful?
I mean, for me, analyzing it, I believe that it's an effort to create a kind of shell diaspora, kind of people that are personal success stories that will be loyal to this government, because actually they are even sending people back to be diaspora ambassadors. So they're diasporan who are ambassadors of this government to their diaspora community. So it's, we already have because the traditional but I'm saying idea. This is not a good thing, because they're trying to undermine all of the traditional diaspora structures, because they have a voice, because they represent a constituency. It's easier to buy off or please one person, individuals, rather than a collective where there's actually either a committee or a president that's answerable to a constituency. It's a totally different thing. They can be less accountable.
I would love for this project to work and be successful, but the only thing we're going to remember it by is that a woman who was in that project, who became vice minister of economy. She then must have done something wrong, signed a plea deal, and migrated with her husband to Norway or Netherlands. I don't remember. That's the core story that is going to be remembered by. So we gave this person a chance to come and do something great in Armenia, and she got involved into something shady, supposedly.
Yeah, who
But
knows?
I don't think we have to say supposedly, because she signed some plea. She says, when you say there's this Gorcun Zahchal thing, when you Gorcun Zahchal, let's translate that one.
But
So you kind of admit the guilt when you do that, right?
But the thing is, I think at least my level of trust is so low in this government that even if I saw that somebody signed some kind of a plea deal, I don't have, for me, it means nothing.
No,
It could mean they want heads to roll. They want to throw someone
she
under
was
the bus
pressured, definitely. They
to
found
take
a
the heat off of
scapegoat,
somebody else.
but she also, like, being deputy minister of
But why did they
economy,
make
she
her-
wanted to migrate to Netherlands
But also,
or Norway.
why make somebody who just came here a deputy minister?
I
This
don't know.
is insane.
I don't think that's ever going to work. But why did I start on this whole rant? I was the one who was mocking the diaspora minister Ranush Hakopian mercilessly for years. But now looking back, we have to admit, because the evidence proves that this Aritun program, Come Home program that she did, was the only effective thing, because out of that program, some hundreds of kids got to come to Armenia and see their father. This is very tangible. That these kids exist, some few hundred Armenian kids from around the world. They really came to Armenia. They really saw their motherland. Now they have emotional ties. They love Armenia more than they used to. They know Armenia. This is very tangible. It gave some results while we were mocking her for doing this weird hats, and then making awarding Mesrop Mashtots with the medal of Mesrop or something like this. But anything that followed, and Igor's program, Zare Sinanyan with his office, everything, it's not even 1% of what she accomplished with that very sort of obvious, not very complicated program. So we've gone from bad to absolutely horrible.
They're working in a different direction, you could say.
It doesn't work.
No, but it's...
How much time do we need to see that?
In my opinion, it's working against... When
a person who doesn't know how to call to this wine factory and say, take this ton of grape from villagers because they will make a riot, he cannot call and force if the person he doesn't belong there. I understand that it's a shady dealing kind of when you pressure a factory to take grapes, but it works overall for the economy, and we don't know how to organize it otherwise. Had we known, had someone come and suggested this way, that every September or October villagers wouldn't gather and say, well, I have nothing to do with my grapes, the wine factories will not take them, now I have to throw away. This keeps recurring and recurring. The person who has the cure from this hasn't come, and I believe only someone who grew up here in Armenia can sort of use the old bad but working way. And someone came, well, it needs to be proved. I would be very glad to see that some solution has come, which is better, which is less corrupt, and it works, but to this point, we have zero evidence of that. That's what I'm saying.
But we can bring arrogance to the table.
We can say that Acemoglu will definitely come and become the Minister of Economy of Armenia, or aide to the president, of what was promised in 2008. That he agreed to come. That was the promise delivered by Nicole from the square, that Acemoglu will come. Because I'm a journalist, I cannot do economy. Acemoglu will take care of that. And a lot of people believe that, because that was a reason. It wasn't reasonable that Acemoglu would come, but it was reasonable to see that this guy knows he cannot deal with economy, so he will give this to someone more capable, right? It makes sense. So these promises were never fulfilled. These positions were given based on one single criteria: loyalty. Whoever is more loyal gets to be the minister of whatever the hell he wants, if he's loyal. And the higher the more loyal you are, the higher your rank. So we have this guy, what's his name? The Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Arabat.
Ararat Mirzoyan. See, I will not go there. I'm not going to call him Arabat, because that's a gift wrapped in a nice paper to him. Then he can say, see, The best joke comedy can do is call me Arab. No, I will go and call that dude. When you were saying that there's ethnic cleansing in Armenia, your boss called and said that there wasn't, and you should be embarrassed, and anyone would have quit that right instant. Anyone named Ararat should be ashamed that there is a campaign against Mount Ararat. And if you are in the team that is doing, be an honest, good person. Go change your name. Become David. I don't know. Become Aragat. It's a real name, by the way. So do
I brought
that or
up, though,
quit.
because he's going to Turkey when at the same time the Turkish television is humiliating him and writing Arabat. Don't tell me that is a mistake.
I don't give a
and he
crap
still
about that.
Is going, but this is the serious
in the
part, that he's
list-
still going to Turkey
in
and
the
doing
list
the
of
bidding
500
people.
things that he's done wrong, that comes on the bottom or maybe beyond that list. That's not my slightest sort of interest that he was called Arabat or whatever the hell he was called on Turkish. I don't care about that. What I care about is he's a person who has never ever been a diplomat and is in charge of this institution and is clearly driving it to wreckage. That's the problem with him.
Well, didn't he
It's
also
not
have to
that.
sign something at one point?
Well, we don't know, but him not opposing clearly and one-dimensionally to it gives way to sort of 2 or 3 iterations of that answer. Him not being very clear, adamant that he has not signed that.
So, lastly, you have kids. Do you see
A kid.
A kid? Yeah. And do you see a future with a different government for him?
Of course. I'm shocked and surprised that all this lasted for so long, because really this should have ended in 2020. But I still can't believe that it can go beyond. I was like, the very, very first time that I would allow myself to even slightly think of another country to live in was in 2021. I was in the US back then when the elections... no, I voted and left, sort of, but the election aftermath, that was the only time I kind of looked, okay, this can work probably, or think of some other place to live. But then sort of this sort of died down. Okay, people have made the wrong choice, but let's sort of realign and try again. If that happens in 26 again, I might go through that phase again. What's going to be the outcome, I honestly don't know, but I would want nothing else for my son but to be prosperous and a useful citizen of his country, a person who's bringing something to the table. And it's one thing to do it in another country, and it's entirely thing to do it here, because this is your home. This is the home you're supposed to build and enhance throughout your life. That's you only have one. We can be very talented in America, we can be the funniest guy in Russia, we can sort of do like some shady diamond deals in Africa, but ultimately this is where you belong, this is where you came from, this is the only place on on earth you can call home. Anything else is okay. You kind of adapted to that society nicely. You did a good job. You are sort of a wealthy man in Fresno, California. Good job, but that's not really your home, and you know it.
I think on that note, let's close off. Thank you so much, Narek.
Thank you.
Really, it was a pleasure. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to Hairenik on YouTube and stay tuned for our next episode. Take care.